Are you out of your mind? We've all heard it said. We've all probably said it at one point or another. Often it's meant to be funny. In the gospel today, it is deadly serious for Jesus. Moving around the countryside, Jesus becomes increasingly conspicuous, his actions provocative. When his cousin John the Baptizer is arrested, Jesus is guilty by association. Like John, he is a public preacher on a journey to proclaim the good news of God's love. And along the way, he brings miraculous healing. He heals Peter's mother-in-law. He heals a leper, then a man with a withered arm. And he heals those with unclean spirits, sometimes on the Sabbath, which draws particular disapproval. He fraternizes with undesirables on the wrong side of the tracks, causing more negative impressions by some. But it is his encounters with demons that raise the most questions, and in today's gospel, things appear to come to a head. Driven by fear, no doubt, of who this son of Joseph and Mary has become, people believe he has gone out of his mind, and they tell him so in front of his family. Fueling the anxiety are the authorities who accuse Jesus of himself being evil, that he casts out the demons by the power of Satan, then called Beelzebul. How can this be, we ask? He's healing people from their madness, making them well. How can they think him mad? He makes the case himself with sound reason. How can Satan cast out Satan? If a kingdom is divided against itself, that house will not be able to stand. What's going on? To try to answer the question, we need see Jesus and try to understand the world in which he enters to minister. First of all, let's just say Jesus is different. His ways are foreign to people. He makes things whole in a divided world. Indeed, divisions define the demographics. There are Jews and there are non-Jews, and never the twain shall meet. There are the healthy and there are the sick, the clean and unclean, so-called. To make matters worse, to be sick implies sinfulness. If you're sick because you sin. Thus, you are a sinner and you are relegated to the company of other sinners like tax collectors. It's the so-called purity code that sanctifies these rigid partitions. The way to be religiously pure is to shun the poor, shun the sick, and the sinful. Thus, the most vulnerable children, women, and men are pushed to the margins of society. Does any of this sound familiar? Suffice it to say, the conditions in which Jesus finds himself are not entirely unlike some that we see around us today. Walls, more sequestered men, women, and children, Ours is a nation seemingly pushed more to segregate by beliefs fear-filled. It's into this anxiety about the other that Jesus brings love in the spirit of reconciliation, where people take sides and leave little middle ground between. The Son of God moves among them, Jews and Gentiles, poor and rich, slave and free, giving himself freely to healing and the proclamation of a living hope. Yes, his ways are strange to people. And his reward is sadly often condemnation. God knows love is mysterious. Christ is his unique self, and so must we be as we too boldly proclaim the good news of God's love. Proclaim the good news of God's love. We have some pretty good examples of that around here. You and I know Kate regularly brings an excellent word for our times and our lives. And of course, at the royal wedding, didn't we have the most brilliant expression of God's love by presiding Bishop Curry? For me, preaching is my ultimate labor of love. But the point of this sermon is not about what I or others like me do. It's really about you and your sermon. Preach the gospel every day if necessary. Use words. We may be the only Bible some people encounter in the living of their life. So it is said. So I ask, how is your sermon coming along? The story of your life, your sermon. Is it hard to find your voice? Are you stymied at least some of the time, if not most of the time, not knowing quite what to say or to do in this complex world in which we live? If so, welcome to the College of Preachers. Welcome. We need the help. It is hard and challenging work. And the lesson bears repeating. Preaching is not a solo endeavor. It's part of a larger conversation ongoing within the church and beyond. Alone, we're part of a cacophony of competing messages, but united in spirit, determined to hone our collective message. We, the church, stand a chance to be heard. And does the world ever need to hear that word? Civil discourse is such a messy business in many ways. It's a practice. It is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it is necessary. And in the times in which we live, a silver lining is that some things are coming to light that have not been spoken of. And there may be great opportunity for us to begin again or to begin anew a conversation in earnest about what it means to live in community. And in that vein, the fact is the church could be bolder, more courageously assertive, and yet ever more tolerant, always with a fierce determination to listen. Satan would isolate us one from another. Just have us point at others. You're wrong. I'm right. Beelzebul drives a wedge to separate people in Jesus today. Today, Satan still plays his hateful divide and conquer game. But we know and have the truth. Love is, and love wins, hands down. Jesus calls us into loving community and would grow it with us. It's happening here. Together we embody powerful good news. God is love for all people. But this love, this inclusive love, it grinds in many ways against the culture. So individualistic it can be. So we need especially to embrace together this gently abrasive force and give voice in word and deed to love among us and carry that in the world as instruments of God's peace. Together, a sermonic symphony, if you will. We will soon leave this sanctuary and return to communities too often torn between loyalties, where distrust abounds and fear looms large as truth proves elusive. It is a most holy moment when your feet and mine cross the thresholds of the church to return to a world teetering off kilter. Jesus knows this territory, and He is among us in here and out there. He is sanity personified, and His truth is marching on. As our hymn said earlier, awake to love and work, press on. Determined to lay bare the truth of your life and the truth of God with it. Get in some small group here at the Cathedral. Civil discourse. Join a Bible study. Read a book with others and discuss it. Explore the Restoration Project. Find ways to practice your theological voice and be ready to be questioned by the life of your sermon, if not even sometimes accused. Because God's love in you and in me is mysterious. We don't fully understand it, but we live those questions, you and I, not alone in it. Here are your mother and your brothers and your sisters too. Let's grow the family. For the one who forges the way of sanity and peace presses on, and us with him. In the name of God. Amen.